Welcome into Outkick the Show. I'm your fearless leader, Clay Travis. I hope all of you are having fantastic Mondays, wherever you may be across this country or this great land. We have got a lot to react to, bunch of stories out there. I was down in the Florida Keys, had an incredible time at Isla Mirada, I was staying at the same place where they filmed Bloodline. If you watch that show, it was a fantastic weekend. Congratulations to my friends Lori Kelly and Bryce. And Bryce, her fiance, who is not as public of a figure right now, at least not. And I'll go ahead and say his name, Bryce Eldridge, on their wedding. And that went really well. So I officiated the wedding, and it went fantastic. I appreciate all of you. I haven't read hardly any mentions, so I am looking forward to interacting with all of you. Let's start here with the Tua injury. To me, the Tua injury probably knocked Alabama out of the playoff race, and I'll explain why momentarily. But first, let me start here, all right? I don't think it's fair to criticize Nick Saban for the injury to Tua, even though it happened with 2 minutes left in the first half and Alabama up 35-7. If you are healthy enough to play, then you probably should be anticipated to play for the entire first half. And so, to me, I understand that we live in an age where blame immediately has to rain down no matter what happens. To me, the Tua incident is just an unfortunate injury that could have happened at any time, and it's unfortunate that it happened as it did. Now, a couple of things. He has been moved from Birmingham down to Houston, and reports are that the surgery went well. Although, to be fair, when's the last time you heard an athlete have a surgery and somebody said, oh my God, that was a disaster of a surgery, we're done forever? I don't know what the impact is going to be here. You talk to medical professionals, they say it's going to be 3 or 4 months till he can do anything. I don't know how this impacts his overall draft stock, because I would imagine that everybody who contemplates drafting him is going to have to get an incredible medical okay from their people. So I will withhold all judgment here. It's possible that Tua might not be able to go pro because of this injury. I don't know, that it could create so much uncertainty that he could end up back at Alabama. It's also possible that this thing is going to go so perfectly well that by March, in the month of early April, he's able to go out and show that he still has the same ability that he had before. It's hard to forecast exactly. But I will say this, you do have to be concerned, I think at least a little bit, about Tua's durability, because while he has the ability to make every throw, he hasn't played in that many games, and he's gotten knocked out almost for the season with a high ankle sprain in the SEC title game. He got a high ankle sprain again against Tennessee, and then he's also been injured a third time, and this is the most severe injury by far, against Mississippi State. In a relatively short number of starts, Tua has shown himself to be fairly susceptible to injury. So this could end up being a positive for him, as I've heard many people talk about. If he doesn't go in the top 5, he doesn't go in the top 10, we could get a situation like what happened with Lamar Jackson, where he falls to a team that's actually more talented, and so he doesn't have as much pressure on him early as a guy who might go in the top 5 to a typically bad football team. There might be a team that drafts him that gives him time to recover. It may also be that the NFL is absolutely so desperate for quarterbacks that taking a risk on an injured quarterback, if you believe he has the skill that Tua has, is not even that big of a risk in the grand scheme of things, okay? So this will be intriguing to watch. Now, what's the impact to Alabama? To me, it likely knocks Alabama out of the playoff race. Why does it knock Alabama out of the playoff race? Because unless Mac Jones goes out against Auburn and Alabama wins something like 45-3 or 42-7 or something along those lines, and Mac Jones throws 4 or 5 touchdown passes, you're not necessarily going to get the same opportunity that Ohio State did when JT Barrett went out with an injury. And then Cardell Jones came in and played so well against Wisconsin, which propelled them into the college football playoff because people said, okay, this team is still pretty good with Cardell Jones. Alabama gets Auburn. It's 8-3 Auburn. Auburn has been competitive against everybody, but they need to win in a big way, and I'm just not sure we're going to actually see that be possible. But that's what Alabama needs to do in order to get into the playoff and be in the mix. I think if Tua were still healthy, we would almost be assured that 11-1 Alabama or 12-1 Georgia would get in. Having said that, let me talk to you about the college football playoff picture. Humbly, I believe that I am the greatest at breaking down the college football playoff picture in the entire country. Right now, it seems pretty clear. LSU 1, Ohio State 2, Clemson 3. Who's going to be the fourth team? The fourth team frontrunner right now is Georgia. If the Bulldogs can beat Texas A&M, and they're a 2-touchdown favorite, and then they can beat Georgia Tech, and Georgia Tech is awful, then the SEC title game would be against LSU, who opened as a 46-point favorite over Arkansas, the biggest spread ever in the history of the SEC, and then LSU gets A&M. 12-0 LSU is already into the championship game, into the playoffs, sorry. So, the question that I think will loom for 12-0 LSU is, how much are they going to go all in on trying to win an SEC championship when they know they're already advancing into the college football playoff? I legitimately wonder about that. Whereas Georgia, if they are 11-1, knows that they have to win this game in order to make the college football playoff. So, the most likely fourth playoff team, assuming that you have assuming that you have LSU, assuming that you have Ohio State, and assuming that you have Clemson, is Georgia. What happens if Georgia loses either to A&M, to Georgia Tech, or to LSU? They're probably out of the playoff, okay? Then who would be the next team up? Well, that's where it gets more complicated. I think probably that at that point in time, Oregon would be the team that would get the nod, or Utah would be the team that would get the nod over the winner of the Big 12, either Baylor or Oklahoma. But this is where the possibility of Alabama cycling back up could end up making an impact here, because if Alabama came back under Mac Jones and blew out Auburn, how in the world would you take Oregon, for instance, over Alabama when Alabama would have crushed Auburn even with their backup? Now, I'm not sure it's going to happen. I think there's a decent chance that Auburn wins that game, and I think it's going to be a close game against Alabama, but that is at least actually looking at the overall landscape, okay? So I would put it right now, as we sit, Georgia as the most likely fourth team, Oregon as the second most likely, Utah as the third most likely, Oklahoma as the fourth most likely, Baylor as the fifth, and Alabama as the sixth most likely team. Now, for you Minnesota fans out there, Minnesota lost to Iowa. Now they have to beat Northwestern and they have to beat Wisconsin to make the Big Ten title game. But if they do that, then win the Big Ten title, then I think they would be in the college football playoff over whoever they played from the Big Ten East in the Big Ten title game. Okay, that's Minnesota's path. For Ohio State, if Ohio State beats Penn State this weekend, and they opened as a 17-plus point favorite in this game, then there is no doubt at all that Ohio State will win the Big Ten East, and it doesn't even matter what happens against Michigan. The Michigan-Ohio State game would be relatively pointless for Ohio State because they would be in the playoff regardless if they won the Big Ten title game. That's the Big Ten picture. ACC, it's just Clemson. Clemson or bust, they can't lose. And in the SEC, it's LSU and potentially Georgia. One of the two of them will be in the college football playoff. And if everything fell apart, Alabama could still be alive as well. All right, that's the larger college football playoff picture. Here is my top 10 for everybody out there. The Outkick National Top 10. All right, are you ready? LSU 1, Ohio State 2, Clemson 3, Alabama 4. I still have Alabama in the 4 spot because that's where I had them before. Georgia, Oregon, Utah, Oklahoma is 8, Minnesota is 9, and I've got Penn State in the 10th position. In the SEC, 1 to 14, LSU 1, Bama 2, Georgia 3, Florida 4, Auburn 5, Texas A&M 6, Tennessee 7, South Carolina 8, this is where it gets messy, Kentucky 9, Missouri 10, Ole Miss 11, Mississippi State 12, Vanderbilt 13, and Arkansas all the way down at the absolute bottom of the list at 14. Now, here's my only argument here about the college football playoff in general. We need to have an additional round, 4 more teams make the playoff, all right? All 5 major conference teams in an 18 playoff, 3 wild cards with a guaranteed spot for a non-Power 5 conference team if they qualify high enough in order to make the college football playoff, all right? That's my solution. Play all of the first 4 games in the higher seeded, the 1, the 2, the 3, and the 4 seed. 1 plays 8, 2 plays 7, 3 plays 6, 4 plays 5, and the top 4 teams get to host a college football playoff game. I think this would be significant because it would eliminate, for instance, LSU right now, which is saying, okay, we're playing for the SEC championship, but does it really matter whether you're the 1, the 2, the 3, or the 4 if you're going to be playing a neutral site game regardless? I don't think so. But if you're the 1, the 2, the 3, or the 4, and you get to play a home playoff game, that's a tremendous advantage given how substantial the home field advantage can be. 8 is the sweet spot. 8 is the right place to be. All right. Colin Kaepernick worked out in Atlanta. This was an absolute mess. All right. Basic advice for life. If you want a job, do what your employer asks you to do to get the job. All right, this is not complicated. If your employer asks you to do something in a highly competitive field, you do it. I have interviewed for jobs my entire life. Do you know what I've always done? Shave, trim the beard, get a haircut, go in dressed to impress. That's the advice I would give my boys. That's the advice I would give everybody out there who is trying to get a job. If someone extends an opportunity to you, do not spurn it because you believe that your opportunity is better the way you think of it. Jump through the hoops in order to get an opportunity to make a lot of money. All right? Colin Kaepernick got an unprecedented offer from the NFL. Maybe because of Jay-Z, maybe because Roger Goodell just wanted to extend a hand in his direction. They were concerned, the NFL was, that teams had reached out to them, a couple of teams, and said, hey, we're interested in Colin Kaepernick, but if we bring him in to actually work out, then we decide not to sign him, then we create a huge mess for our team and our program, and we just want to know how good he is. So instead of creating that circus by bringing him in for a workout, remember that Cap has not worked out in 3 years. The NFL said, you know what? That's a great idea. We're going to do it on Saturday at the Atlanta Falcons facility, and every team that wants to come will be able to come. 25 teams, representatives from 25 teams were going to come. And then Colin Kaepernick's crew decided that they were upset by a standard issue waiver that they asked him to sign. And they also wanted their own camera crews, and they wanted Nike there, and they wanted to create all the attention and create all the stir. So at the last minute, they relocated from the Atlanta Falcons. Only 7 teams actually followed Colin Kaepernick an hour away for his own workout. He showed up with a camera crew in tow, live streamed it on YouTube. Nike wanted to use the footage for a new television commercial, and he showed up for the workout in a Kunta Kinte t-shirt. This is the same dude who previously wore a Fidel Castro t-shirt and lectured Americans on how much more free Cubans were than Americans. He also practiced for the San Francisco 49ers in socks depicting police officers as pigs. He called police officers modern-day slave catchers. And he also called the owner of the Baltimore Ravens a slave master and Ray Lewis and Uncle Tom. This dude does not want to actually play in the NFL. That's the only lesson you can take away here. Colin Kaepernick wants to remain a martyr. He wants to remain unemployed because the minute he gets a job offer, all of a sudden he becomes just another dude. And all of his social justice warriordom and all of his posturing and all of his empty statements become a more substantial issue for him because he's not relevant anymore. And so this is, I think, the last refuge of a scoundrel. The NFL extended their hand. Jay-Z made an attempt to give Colin Kaepernick an opportunity to play in the NFL, and Colin Kaepernick intentionally spurned it so that he could stay true to whatever misguided ideals he has. This is, I think, a lesson for everybody out there who has an opportunity to get a job. In order to get the job, behave like you want the job. It's not complicated. If you don't want the job, that's fine. But if somebody gets you an interview with a decision maker and you get an opportunity to sit at the table with them, show up and treat that interview as a legitimate job prospect, and you just might get the job. I think that the way this scenario played out, everybody out there who wanted to argue that all Colin Kaepernick cared about was attention has all the ammunition they need. He's not going to get a job now. He got a workout. The only way I can see somebody giving him a job is if it's an owner who everybody hates, like Dan Snyder, and he just decides, you know what? I'm going to suddenly make the media love me. I'll go sign Colin Kaepernick and bring him in. And maybe that could make sense if Greg Roman is going to be the next head coach of the Washington Redskins or something like that. But in general, Colin Kaepernick, I believe his career is over. And frankly, I'm ready for this dude to just disappear. He's never really said anything intelligent. He's never addressed the media. He's never been an outspoken or educational or enlightening figure in the course of American discussion. And remember, this is a guy who got benched for Blaine freaking Gabbert. This is a guy who began his kneeling because he wasn't good enough to win the San Francisco 49er job. And I believe this was Colin Kaepernick's last time on the national stage. Maybe I'm right. Maybe I'm wrong. But I believe this was his last best opportunity to continue to be a football player. And I thought he made it clear, based on the way he behaved, that he doesn't have any interest in actually playing in the NFL anymore. So I think this was, beyond a shadow of a doubt, the end of Colin Kaepernick in the NFL. And regardless of what job you have or what job you want, when you get opportunity, take advantage of it. Don't behave in the manner in which Colin Kaepernick did. I think he blew his chance. And I don't know who he's listening to. I don't know who's advising him. But this was an ugly, ugly performance for Colin Kaepernick. Speaking of ugly performances, the biggest and most interesting game perhaps of the opening weekend, of the NFL weekend that just passed, was the Ravens smoking the Texans. I'll admit that I was wrong here. I thought that the Texans, coming off a bye week, would perform much better than they did. Now, early on in this game, it was no score for the first half, basically. The NFL is going to have to address the pass interference rule that they changed. If DeAndre Hopkins basically getting tackled in the end zone is not pass interference, I don't know what possibly is pass interference, all right? That was, beyond a shadow of a doubt, pass interference. The Texans should have had a 1st and goal there from the 2-yard line, and maybe they take a 7-0 lead there, and the game ends up looking different as a result. Instead, the NFL refuses to call the pass interference, which was clear, and everybody could tell that it was there, okay? And instead, they make the decision to not call anything, and as a result, the Texans end up losing. Now, here's what I'd be troubled by if I'm a Texans fan. Bill O'Brien had a lot of time to get ready here, and his team didn't show up. Now, they got a big game on Thursday, and if you had to choose between beating the Colts or beating the Ravens, this is the one you would choose. But I believe this is a bad look for the Texans, and I'm curious to see what they're going to look like on Thursday. Having said that, I am still not of the opinion, beyond a shadow of a doubt, I believe Lamar Jackson remains a flash in the pan. I think that he is Tim Tebow. I think that he is RG3. I think that he is Vince Young. I think that he is Colin Kaepernick. A quarterback who comes into the league and for 20 or 24 games looks unstoppable, and then everybody catches up with him. We saw this already start to happen with Sean McVay. The NFL believed that Sean McVay was a genius. Everybody went out last offseason and hired anybody who used to work with Sean McVay. If you were a white dude and you had a scruffy face and you worked on the offensive side of the ball, you got a job. That's how much everybody loved Sean McVay. And then what happened? NFL defenses caught up with Sean McVay. We've seen this with Greg Roman before. I think he's a great offensive coordinator at designing new schemes to attack defenses. But remember when Ron Jaworski went on ESPN and said he thought Colin Kaepernick could become the greatest quarterback of all time, and ESPN ran with that like crazy, and then Colin Kaepernick just slowly collapsed. Do you remember when Tim Tebow mania was running at its fiercest, and Tebow won a playoff game and hit Demaryius Thomas for a touchdown, and you were either all in on Tebow or you hated him? Remember when Vince Young won a overtime game, won 8 games in a row, I believe it was, as a rookie with the Titans on a 40-yard scramble, and everybody said we've never seen anybody like Vince Young before. The only thing that happens in the NFL that is unbeatable is a drop-back, pocket-passing quarterback who can consistently convert third down and long. That's the only thing that works long-term. There are a lot of guys who can be flash-in-the-pan heroes, but I have seen this script before. The only thing that works in the long term in the NFL is dropping back to pass and being able to make plays from the pocket. Doesn't mean you can't occasionally run. Russell Wilson occasionally runs. Back in the day, Aaron Rodgers used to occasionally run. Steve Young ran a lot. Being an athletic quarterback is okay, but you have to be capable and able of extending first downs, extending drives by getting first downs. That is the difference, all right? It is not suddenly going to change. The NFL is not going to go through some sudden alteration where all of a sudden Lamar Jackson is able to make the plays that he does for a long-range process. We've been through it before. RG3, Tim Tebow, Colin Kaepernick, and Vince Young, all flashes in the pan. All right? It's going to happen again here. Finally, I want you to know what you need to know about impeachment. I have hardly been paying attention to impeachment on television at all because, to me, the Donald Trump impeachment is like the media knowing what the final score of a football game is going to be and talking about it as if they don't know what the final score of the football game is going to be. So let me tell you what the final score of this game is going to be. The House of Representatives, with a Democratic majority, is going to impeach Donald Trump. The Senate, with a substantial Republican majority and needing 67 votes to remove him, is not going to remove him. The only drama is going to be, will more than 50 senators agree to remove him? And I think the answer is going to be no. So the media is trying to hype this up like it is some massive story and like it is going to travel in some huge direction, when the truth of the matter is this: it's already a foregone conclusion. It's like talking about a game you already know the final score of. And I believe the end result is going to actually benefit Donald Trump because it's going to strengthen his base even more behind him. And I think right now that Trump is going to win again in 2020 based upon who he's going to likely be running against, which I believe is going to be Elizabeth Warren. So that is where we are headed here. You don't need to pay attention for the next several months and worry about this thing. It is a foregone conclusion. Here's the bigger issue, and I've been saying this from the get-go, and I think it's finally going to end up a big talking point. We are in mid to late November now. Before impeachment is over, it is likely to be 2020. If you believe that someone should be removed from office, do you know what you have the ability to do? Vote them out in November of next year. About 11 months from now, we will have an election, and the winner of the presidential election will be our next president. Why should 435 House of Representatives members and 100 senators, 500, I believe, and 35 overall, whatever the math is there, why should they make the decision on what should happen with a president when we have got the election coming up in 11 months? Let 200 million people, or whatever the total number ends up being, 140 million people actually vote. I will be one of them, and I'll be happy to decide at that point in time who should be the next president of the United States. Until then, this is all a big show. The media knows how it's going to end. They're just pushing your buttons to try to make money and keep their ratings as high as they can. I'm not worried about that. I'm just here to tell you the truth. I love all of you. DBAP unless you need to SBAP. If you like the show, share it with your friends. I am Clay Travis. This has been Outkick the Show. I am live on Lock It In 30 minutes to talk about football this week. I'll see you guys. Kisses. Love y'all. See ya. Thank you, Facebook. See y'all.